Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property.
Hey Stu, how you doing?
All right, not bad yourself.
Yeah, I'm all right. Oh, I sounded a little bit Suffolk then. I
All
sounded a little
right.
bit Suffolk, Norfolk. Don't worry, it just twangs. It twangs in occasionally.
Okay.
But anyway, what we're going to talk about? Yeah, so stamp duty, land tax, hollybobs, stamp
That's
duty, land
right.
tax holiday. So good old Rishi announced in July that we were all going to go on a stamp duty holiday until the end of March 2021. Lots of fuss in the papers, Stu, lots of hoo-ha, lots of isn't it Marv, isn't it Marv? So, you've been in the eye of the storm, mate. Where have you found it? Where has PCS been in the last 3 months? Is the old stamp duty thing all it's cracked up to be?
I don't think so, I'm afraid. There's been lots and lots of sort of positive publicity regarding the holiday. I'm just not so sure I buy into it. For me personally, I think that those looking to buy a property, that they've made up their mind that they want to, and I'm not sure that the stamp duty, I know it's a pain in the bum, but I'm not sure the stamp duty actually means somebody can't. I think it means that they'll buy that same property or property type in maybe 6 months or 12 months. They continue to save up, but I'm not really sure it sort of means that there's going to be more people buying and therefore more people selling. It's not one, that convinces me. And for me, I just think that we've come out of, such a strange situation where, we had the sort of demise of Brexit that seemed to come and go all of a sudden. And the property market was on a real high. January was phenomenal. February was phenomenal. March, even though we lost, the last week of it with the lockdown, etc., March was still on numbers a really good month. And to go from those highs to the sort of low of April and May, where the work was, there's hardly anybody moving really. To go to that sort of low, and for the government and their governing bodies to all come out and say that they didn't recommend that part of the moving process go ahead, to go from that extreme to then June, whereby the lockdown was all partially lifted, and the property industry was one that had that sort of shot in the arm. You guys go ahead and crack on.
Yeah,
It was unbelievably busy, probably the busiest I've ever known it in my entire time, in the last 23, 24 years. So June was phenomenal for PCS. And basically, anybody you spoke to, whether it be a mortgage broker, an estate agent, a surveyor, a law firm, everybody was reporting that, it was unprecedented, the amount of new business that was coming on. So to then, right in the middle of it, receive, confirmation of the stamp duty holiday seemed to me personally, strange timing, because I don't think it was necessarily needed. And all I think that's happened as a result of it is you've just pulled a lot of your pipeline further forward. So you could argue that, yeah, I want to realise that pipeline as soon as possible, obviously. But for me, you're now going to have a situation where in April and May, when the holiday ends, and because the limit was up to 500, I just don't see many transactions going through, after the end of March for me. So I'm not so
yeah.
sure.
I mean, I think part of the problem is, we're probably in a bit of a honeymoon period now. I mean, I think, to be fair, coming out of lockdown, we probably were anyway. I'm getting, I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle from you, Stu. Obviously, I mean, with my sort of training hat on and my locuming hat, really. Didn't do any locuming during lockdown, unsurprisingly. But so I'm hearing a lot of different pictures and a lot of different stories from around the country. And certainly, some firms just retrenched completely and basically put an out of office on and said, sort of, see when it's all over. And they probably won't be opening their doors again, I would suggest. Others really, I think pivoted to home working for their staff as quickly as they could, and maintained a profile, which I think was really important. But I'm sort of unconvinced that, the stamp duty holiday, I agree entirely. I'm not convinced that it was needed right now. I wondered whether it might have been made more sense, bit closing the door after the horse has bolted now. And unfortunately, Rishi's not going to listen to me, which is a bit of a shame. I tweet him occasionally. But I hear, I just get the, the tumbleweed going down the front of my my phone, Stu. I never actually get a reply. But the thing is, I wonder whether it might have made more sense to see what was happening to the market in the autumn when that furlough period ends, to see kind of then whether from 6 months from then the market needed a shot in the arm. Because I just really worry that, there's going to be fewer conveyancers out there because of what we're all experiencing. Therefore, there's just going to be an enormous logjam of work into March. So we all might as well all book our holidays in April, because nobody's going to be moving and going anywhere, because everyone's going to have that panic to complete before the deadline. Unless, of course, he feels the need to kind of push the kick the ball into the long grass and lose the tax revenue that he would have been getting. But I just think actually the real crunch time is coming into autumn and winter with the ending of furlough, and actually that's going to have, I think, the biggest impact on the market, and he might have done better to wait.
Lorraine, I completely agree with you on that point. I think you've got a situation where you've had people that have been doing nothing for 2 or 3 months that potentially wanted to do some conveyancing.
Oh, and the rest.
Yeah, and the rest. So they're now starting to transact. You've had people that have taken reflection during that period that have wanted to upsize because maybe they were, stuck in a flat, no garden, etc. Maybe people wanted to downsize as well. So there's people that have taken sort of that period to reflect and are now transacting. I think there's thought processes that there could be another lockdown in the future. Yeah. There's a thought process that we're coming into autumn straight winter, so people want to get things tied up before then. And then, of course, the real key to the whole thing is the possibility of unemployment really increasing. And that naturally must happen with the furlough scheme ending. Undoubtedly, there will be people that are furloughed that unfortunately won't be going back to work. And that must be, a big thing for a lot of people that are looking to potentially move. And if they can get that process concluded before, they have to face the music kind of thing, then they'll do so. So for me, I really think that the furlough scheme ending October, November will be the key time frame. If unemployment does go up substantially, will that affect the market? And at that point, an injection, of goodwill into the market would have been very welcome. So it would have made sense to me that would have been the perfect timing to have done it. But
I would have thought so. I would have thought some analysis into the sort of December, January time and poke it up for 6 months from February, really. But because also I'm wondering whether, as a matter of course, and I kind of asked this to people on my invariable sort of Zoom training now, Stu, because obviously I've not been in a classroom with people for quite a long time, but whether conveyance is a matter of course now, particularly on transactions that might have dragged out a bit, whether conveyancers are asking, at the point of exchange, for example, just before you're going to commit, about a buyer, well, are you on furlough, and or are you aware of any redundancy consultation that might involve your job? Because I would suggest inevitably that's got to be something that's got to be reported to a lender. And I think that also what potentially conveyancers are going to be facing is quite a backlash from lenders if we kind of bang on and push through a bunch of transactions without making that proper inquiry, maybe a bit of a see no evil, hear no evil, let's just punt this through. Because again, if prices fall off a cliff, and the problem is, and I digress, but a lot of people are too young to remember it happening. I qualified in 1991 and I was made redundant in the 91 property crash 6 months after I qualified. And that's probably the reason I'm sitting here today, is because I just I did as many things as I could. Yeah. And if I developed a skill, I never let it go. Because I had that spectre of redundancy right at the beginning of my career, and that just changed everything for me. And I realised it wasn't necessarily a job for life. But I think, the problem is going to be that if these transactions are pushed through by conveyancers and then there's a drop off in the market, the lenders are absolutely going to have the conveyancers in their sights. If there's repossessions, negative equity, difficulty, a high instance of repossessions into the middle part of next year, I can guarantee the lenders will have absolutely no hesitation in targeting the conveyancers and crawling all over their files. And if they found that someone was on furlough, or worse still, being made redundant, and the conveyancer didn't inquire, I think that's going to be a big problem for conveyancers.
Undoubtedly, we receive that mortgage offer from the bank that is based on a set criteria at that time. And I think a popular myth that people really don't quite understand, and when I say people, anybody within the industry, whether it be clients, agents, everyone, even some lawyers I've come across don't quite get this point. And that is that a mortgage offer is a contract made between the client and the lender. It doesn't tie in with exchanging contracts. So, of course, you can exchange contracts, a buyer and a seller are legally bound, but the bank's not tied into that contract. So, once I foresee sort of greater problems, I can see people that are exchanging, they're pushing for completion. And then during, the October period when the furlough scheme comes to an end, if all of a sudden their credit rating or their personal circumstances has changed, banks will withdraw mortgage offers. So I think, yes, there is a situation whereby a conveyancer, a mortgage broker, you are under an obligation to report your client's personal circumstances to the lender. But equally, I think there's a great risk that mortgage offers will be withdrawn from clients, no matter where they are in the stage of buying and selling. They could have already exchanged, looking to complete in a few days. All of a sudden, the mortgage offer's been pulled from them. And I can remember this only too well during the last recession. It did happen.
Yeah, I think also then what conveyancers need to be doing, don't they, Stu, is actually, and I hate to say this, but I say this a lot on courses and stuff, is actually going back to their standard reports, going back to what they're advising their clients. And I would bet every conveyancer in the country has got something buried in their report or their T&Cs about, if your circumstances change, you must tell us. I'm sorry, but if you've got a client who says, didn't read it, didn't understand it, the conveyancer will be stuffed, I think is the legal phrase. So I think conveyancers need to be revisiting their standard reports and really bringing these sorts of things right to the top of the pile and making it really clear. I mean, the point you've just made really well, this idea that, well, if you exchange, if your offer's pulled, it's pulled, which of course, funnily enough, brings us back to the age-old the chestnut that's been doing the rounds for the last few months, Stu, of course, is and not necessarily where we intended this conversation to go, but is of course the good old simultaneous exchange and completion. It saved a lot of bacon throughout the lockdown, and I think the point you make about offers being withdrawn is a very, very good one. And I think conveyancers are not going to be gung-ho rushing into exchanges and with a longish completion date. They're probably going to be sitting on the simultaneous. Now, we all know it's got its faults.
Yeah.
But I try and express a simultaneous sometimes to be the least worst option. But ultimately, what I also think people forget, Stu, is that we advise and the client instructs. We say, these are your options. These are the risks. What do you want us to do? And I think that balance is often really lost. And I just think this whole stamp duty, land tax, hooray, let's get our flip-flops on and go for a holiday is actually masking, much bigger issues about the property market. But I think maybe we should be packing our bucket and spades for next April, mate, because, nobody's going.
I certainly think so. Now, we're paid to advise the client, not to make their decision, of course. But these are going to be unprecedented times, and I don't think it's reasonable for a client to expect a client to have this kind of knowledge. And for me, going forward, it's going to be very quiet in the months after this holiday breaks. And for me, it's not necessarily a good thing they've introduced this measure. For me, it's just pulling all your pipeline further forward. It's putting more stress on the conveyancing industry, more stress on the property industry, because it's not just the lawyers. Of course, it's the estate agents, it's the mortgage brokers, it's the surveyors, it's the removal companies. You're putting a big burden on the whole industry to cope with probably another third again in terms of volume. And of course, with that, natural problems are going to arise.
I think also it occurred to me, perhaps in conclusion, Stu, actually, that where we are now, kind of, mid 2020, well, that's actually fine. But it occurred to me the penny's not going to drop for a lot of people. that they want to and can move till around about Christmas, and they're going to think, I can still do this in 3 months. So I can see a lot hitting the fan in that first 3 months of 2021. I reckon I'll perhaps have quite a lot of locum work then, won't I?
You might be in luck. You might be in luck. It'd be a good thing
do
for
every
yourself.
day. Well, on that shameless plug, really, Stu, that's the only way I can describe it, isn't it? Well, stamp duty, a little bit crap, but Lorraine will be available for bar mitzvahs and weddings. Thanks ever so much for that, lovely. And again, stamp duty, no doubt, is going to be another one we return to. So see you soon.
No problem. Take care, though.
Bye.